All right. All right. So, guys, we are going to get into it very quickly today. We are going to go into some details. We are going to talk about building a career and not just building a skill set. Now, the reason we're talking about this, the reason we're talking about building a career and not just a skill set is because this is something that a lot of people get lost in. A lot of people start out in, not even necessarily just combat sports, but in athletics in general and think that I just need to get really good at the sport and that's it, right? Which, don't get me wrong, is a massive part of it. Do not misconstrue this to me saying that you don't need to get good at the sport. You absolutely do, but you need to think about your career as a whole, not just getting good at the sport. That is one piece of the puzzle. So we're going to talk about the career side of, becoming an athlete and all of that today. And we're going to get going in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the #1 show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I am your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are talking about building your career instead of just building your skill set. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Well, what I mean when I say that, when I talk about building a career and not building a skill set, is that a lot of you guys get very stuck in thinking that if I'm just good at the sport, then everything's going to fall into place, which, don't get me wrong, massive part of it. So anything that I'm talking about today, do not misconstrue as me saying that you do not need to focus on getting good at the sport. Do not misconstrue as me saying that, being a good athlete in terms of the sport is not important, because of course it is. But a lot of you guys forget about the fact that the goal, especially in a combat sports setting, is to make enough money that you don't need to go get a job once you're done, right? Like, of course, we want to talk about, having the big fights and the legacy and the cool things that can come with the career. But in the end, when you start a sport like this, your goal, if you were trying to make it a career, should be to make the most amount of money possible and get out healthy. Could we agree on that? Make the most amount of money possible, got the words right that time, and get out healthy. And in order to do that, you need to think about more than just the skill set. You need to think about the career. One of my favorite examples of this is Sean O'Malley. And love the guy or hate the guy, the dude understands how to build a career. The dude understands how to make money in his sport outside of just being really good. Now, of course, he is also really good. Of course, he also has an incredible skill set. But look at how O'Malley operates outside of the game. As soon as he started getting any type of platform whatsoever, he started doing a podcast with his coach. He started a Twitch channel where he was getting paid to play video games. He started a clothing brand. I can't remember exactly what it's called, Sugar something, I'm sure. And with that clothing brand, started doing clothing drops. As his name grew, those clothing drops started making more and more money. Now, outside of training, this dude is finding every possible avenue and every possible way to bring in money. And one of the biggest complaints, or one of the biggest pushbacks that I get when I talk about this, is athletes basically saying, well, yeah, that's all well and good, but that's time that I could be spending training that I'm, spending doing something that's not helping me get better. But you've also got to understand that you can't train for 15 hours a day. You just can't. You can't train 15 hours a day. So take some of those training hours that you're doing, take them out so your body can recover and focus on figuring out how to build your career. When it comes to building the career too, it's not just, streaming on Twitch or doing whatever, but start asking yourself, how do you see yourself making money with your platform, right? Because as your platform starts to grow, you need to start thinking about how you're actually going to do something with it, because you can continue to be good at fighting and continue to rise through the ranks. But if you're not learning how to actually maximize your platform, then that's going to put a huge cap on what you're actually able to accomplish financially in your career, right? So start thinking to yourself, how do I, number one, start actually building up more of a platform within the sport? So, Is that, do I see myself doing something on social media? Do I see myself maybe like starting the clothing brand? Am I looking at, just potentially getting more sponsorships? Like, what is the way that I can see myself making some more money outside of just competition? Now, that is actually one thing I wanted to touch on as well, is when it comes to getting sponsored. So many athletes get stuck in the mindset that, they don't have a big enough name yet. They don't, they're not a pro. They're not on a big winning streak. So these are all reasons why they can't get sponsored. But the thing you've got to remember, businesses that might be able to sponsor you do not care about your winning streak. They don't. What businesses care about is that sponsoring you can benefit them. I know we all love to sit here and say, oh, but it's an opportunity to help an up and coming athlete. And like, you might meet some fucking saints out there that just want to help an up and coming athlete to say they can help an up and coming athlete. But 99 times out of 100, they want to know how it's going to help them, right? I have athletes ask me for free training all the time, multiple times a week at least. And every single time I'll ask them a question. Why? Why should I train you for free? And the reason I ask that question is because, plain and simple, if you can't show me any benefit to me working with you for free, then why am I going to do it? Just out of the kindness of my own heart? Then I would be training everybody for free. I wouldn't make enough to pay my rent. I'd be homeless and I wouldn't be able to train anybody. Right? So you need to be able to show the benefit of working with you for free. And even if you're not on a big winning streak, even if you're not a professional yet, even if you're not, this, that, or the other thing, show them the benefit. What can you provide them? Do you have a little bit of a following on social media that you can start, funneling traffic to them through your social media pages? Do you have a skill that they could benefit from that, they could pay you X amount, or they could pay for, a certain area of your training, and in exchange for paying for that certain area of your training, you'll do whatever it is they need for them? Like, what is the benefit that you can provide? Because if you start thinking about these things right now, then you're going to be able to put yourself in a position that you're not having to work full time, right? I have an athlete that is a great video editor. And one thing that he started doing is he started creating highlight videos. And now, as he creates more highlight videos and has people reaching out about creating a highlight video for them, he can start to monetize that service. And again, is it a sponsorship of just him being paid to just be an athlete? No, but that's money that he's bringing in that is not through a 9-to-5 job. That is starting to build his career, right? Because after a while, that starts getting a little bigger. Now you can hire a video editor to work for you, show you the way that that's being done, pay them, $10 a video when you're bringing in $40 a video. You guys get the idea. Again, I'm kind of just pulling numbers out at that point. But the idea is, guys, that's a way that you can start to monetize your platform other than just being good at fighting. And that is honestly the key. Coming back to what I was saying about athletes asking me for free training, that's always the first question that I ask is why? Because a lot of them respond with, because I'm broke. And I'm like, okay, that is of no benefit to anyone but you, right? You've got your hands out saying, give me something with nothing in exchange. And as much as, don't get me wrong, I wish I could just train everybody because I enjoy doing this for a living. I can't because I also need to make a living. You guys get what I'm saying? So businesses want to know what you can do for them. Businesses want to know why it's going to benefit them to work with you for free. But if you start thinking about this stuff early, you start thinking about this stuff as an amateur, you start thinking about this stuff today, wherever you're at in your career, even if, let's say right now, as an amateur, you're able to pick up 2 sponsors that pay you $100 a month. You're making $200 a month. Is it enough to not work a 9-to-5 job? Of course not. But it's $200 a month more that you're putting away. Now you're getting shirts made, and that's coming from the profits of your sponsorship instead of coming from your 9-to-5 job. Right now with those shirts, you start to make a little bit more, right? And then as that clothing starts to happen, now you're just making a little bit more and a little bit more. And you're starting into that path of being able to make money just because you're an athlete. And the more and more you're able to do that, the closer you get to quitting that job. The closer you get to quitting that job, the more and more you're able to build your career instead of just building your skill set. And as you start thinking about this stuff now, that starts to open more doors in the future, starting to build more of a platform. Because, if you're known as the guy who's creating these highlight videos, or you're known as the guy who is, making this clothing, or you're known as the fighter out there that is making their money through doing this, doing that, whatever it might be. Now, as your career continues to progress, your platform gets bigger. And as your platform gets bigger, that becomes a podcast that people are sponsoring and paying you X amount of money to, speak about their products on your show. That becomes a YouTube channel. That becomes a Twitch channel. That becomes a bigger clothing brand that you have people running for you, and you're just taking a chunk of the profits. And now let's say you make it to the UFC. You make it to the top level. That dream comes true. But let's say you have 3 or 4 fights, and then, it doesn't go your way and you get cut. But because you already had a platform before you got there, you didn't rely on the UFC to give you that platform. Now, within those 3 or 4 fights, the sponsors that you had on your YouTube channel, Twitch channel, all these other income streams are paying you that much more money. Now, instead of making 10 and 10 or 20 and 20 or whatever it is for the fights themselves, you're making that fight paycheck plus X amount of thousands of dollars on top of that. Now the UFC builds your platform up more for you in the time that you're there. And because you had that platform built up more for you, now when you're back on the regional scene, or when you're in another promotion, or whatever happens next, you've got a good amount of income coming in every single month through the sponsors, through the channels, through all of these other things, right? But the key, guys, the absolute key to this is stop waiting. Stop waiting until I make the UFC before I can, start working on an alternate stream of income. Because very, very few people create a platform big enough for that to actually make them their money. But if you start working on this right away, you start posting on social media, you start learning how to create sponsorship packages, you start learning how to financially improve your situation. That was a weird way to say that, but I think the point got across. You start learning how to financially improve your situation from the early days. Now what happens is you start to grow, and then while you're actually in that position where you have the biggest platform, you grow that much more. And then you're set up by the time you get to that level. You're not waiting to be at that level before you set yourself up. So guys, I hope that was valuable. I hope that just gave you a little bit of a perspective shift. And if you want to learn more on how you can do that, shoot me a message on Instagram, because this is something that I've started helping some athletes out with, and we're getting pretty nice results, at coach_Dusseault. But as always, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. If you learned something, if you had a little perspective shift, I'd love to know what it is. Shoot me a message across any of my social media platforms. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you on the next episode.